Welcome, viewers, to CHP Talks for another edition, and we're privileged to have today with us Major Russ Cooper. He is the founder, board chair, president, and CEO of C3RF, which is the Canadian Citizens for Charter Rights and Freedoms. Major Cooper is retired from both the Royal Canadian Air Force and Air Canada. In his military career, he was a decorated CF-18 combat pilot, and he served in several staff positions as the director of major capital acquisition projects. In the civilian aviation sector, he complemented service as an international airline pilot with national responsibilities in the field of post-9/11 civil aviation security. He's published internationally in this latter area, and he's now fully retired from his follow-on career as a human factors engineer and a Transport Canada flight test pilot delegate, and he is pursuing an abiding interest in the preservation of fundamental Canadian charter rights. This latter pursuit has been prompted by his sense that these rights, hard won by the sacrifice of Canadians past, are under attack and are on the verge of being lost. And it's just a real privilege to have you join us today, Major Cooper. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
Yeah. So when just before we start talking, we want to talk about Afghanistan today and your comments and perspective on that. But before we do that, when did you start C3RF? I know I met you several years ago, and just about when did you start that?
That was in the start of 2017, and that was motivated by Motion M103 that was coming before a parliamentary vote in March of 2017. So that's when we basically started with a handful of people, six to 10 folks, and now we're up to about 40,000.
Oh, well, I know you put out some tremendous articles about the attacks on our freedom, the things that Canadians should be concerned about in these days. And certainly the last few months have been a long and desperate slide into a combination of tyranny and anarchy, and that's a bad combination.
That's incredible.
Today we want to look around on the other side of the globe, Afghanistan, and just to get, as a military person, your perspective. What went wrong? Today, many Canadians, myself included, many of our members are very concerned about the civilians there, as well as Canadian citizens there. We have still some military people, embassy staff, and the United States has a lot of people there who are under attack by the Taliban in what, for many of us, came as a surprising turn of events. Maybe take us back to the beginning and how and why did we get involved? Should we have gotten involved in Afghanistan? And why are we experiencing this trouble today?
Yeah, it is a catastrophe. And I must say up front at the start of the whole thing, I think we did the right thing. Remember, we had 9/11. We were attacked on our own soil, on Western soil. 28 Canadians, I believe, died in the Twin Tower attack. And so responding to that attack was we were compelled to do so. And initially, I thought we did things right. The Americans, in particular, did things right. They sent in the CIA. They did a superb job of organizing the Northern Alliance resistance against the Taliban to basically take the country over and kick the Taliban out. It was a fantastic success. Happened in a matter of 6 months. That should have been end of story. That should have been the objective, to get rid of the Taliban and secure. And the actual objective was Al Qaeda in the first place, and they escaped through mountain passes into places like Iran and Iraq subsequent. So the objective in Afghanistan had been obtained. The mistake was the fact that our generals, our politicians, the people in charge did not truly understand the threat. When they were responding to the physical attack of 9/11 and they went to war, they did the right thing. But in staying, they did the wrong thing because they did not understand the mindset of the enemy that they were facing. They believed that they could throw in a couple of McDonald's outlets, build some schools, start some gender study programs in universities in Kabul, and society would all of a sudden, we would build a new society. We would bring Afghanistan into modernity, and it would be a plus plus all the way around. We failed to recognize the mindset of the people of Afghanistan, what motivates them, what their belief system is, what their value system is all about. And because we misread that, we basically spent 20 years there wasting our time. And we can see now that all is lost. All that blood, all that treasure, it's all lost in a matter of a weekend. From a Friday to a Monday, it's all gone. Now we have, I believe it's 10,000 Americans who are stranded outside the airport gates trying to get out. The Biden administration failed to follow through on Trump's drawdown plan, which saw the drawdown happening in the May timeframe, which is at the start of the fighting season, at the when everyone's still up in the winter habitats. Instead, he shut down Bagram Air Base totally. It's gone, so it can't be used to get people out. And they decided to pull everything out in this time frame, which is the height of the fighting season, when every mujahideen is in the field with his weapon.
Yeah.
This is totally irresponsible. All is lost, and this is a huge catastrophe that can probably get a lot worse from here on in.
You know, it's so tragic to think of the people, especially, well, you know, of course, our citizens and soldiers, and the U.S. citizens and soldiers, but the people of Afghanistan, who some of whom, you know, helped us a great deal. Many of them sacrificially risking their lives. And up until recently, it looked like that had been a worthwhile risk. They had to, you know, risk their lives, but in order to create a better society. And now they're being left to their own devices. I mean, Canada has agreed to take refugees in who are trying to escape the retribution and slaughter of the Taliban. But how are we going to do that? And the Prime Minister seemed to be fumbling the other day when he said, well, you know, and we're closing our embassy, but somehow we're still going to get these people into our country. Well, what are they going to do? Ask the Taliban for an exit visa? Like, you know, it's people hanging onto airplanes and falling to their deaths. I mean, all this stuff is just horrendously tragic. And it's the kind of thing that you don't ever want to even hear about.
I don't know how he can, the Prime Minister is saying that they're looking at taking 20,000 out of Afghanistan. I don't know what he's talking about, because that 20,000, where that's coming from, I understand they're bringing airports or aircraft are landing in Ottawa now with so-called refugees on board. But I don't think those refugees are coming from Afghanistan. I think they're coming from other displacement camps throughout the Middle East. I don't know how he's going to get those people out of Kabul proper.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great empires in the past have come up short trying to do something in Afghanistan. I remember in our lifetimes, the Russians tried to attack Afghanistan, and they really were driven out in humiliation. And I think that was a surprise to them, because they were at the time, they were a very strong, you know, dictatorship. They could sort of, you know, set their goals and usually achieve them, but not in Afghanistan.
It's notable that they were as unsuccessful in subjugating Afghanistan as we were, but at least they managed to get out okay. They had a much better plan, and they got all their equipment, all their personnel out without this kind of consternation.
So what do you think it is about the mentality, the men who are in, you know, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, who you know, are manning these grenade launchers and whatever they have? What drives them, and why is it that we in the West don't seem to understand, you know, their passion and their willingness to die on the battlefield?
I think it's all if you look at, and I wrote about this back in 2017. I wrote about this. Because when Motion M103 was coming through, it was promulgated on the basis that Islam is a religion of peace, and a lot of other narratives that just aren't true. When you look at Islam and what motivates the Mujahideen, a soldier in the field, you're looking at a system that is based on Sharia law. Sharia law, and this is quite important because the new ruler of Afghanistan, who, by the way, was in Guantanamo up until 2014, when Obama released him in exchange for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, this new leader of Afghanistan is saying that for us not to worry because everyone will be treated in accordance with Islamic law.
Wow.
Well, Islamic law is Sharia law. And it's not like any legal system that we have. We have a common law system, basically, based on the Magna Carta from 800 years ago. Sharia law is something that goes back centuries and centuries, and incorporates a golden rule, but not a golden rule like the Christian golden rule. Our golden rule is to treat everybody as you would have them treat as you would treat yourself. The golden rule in Islam under Sharia law is that there are Muslims and there are non-Muslims. And the golden rule applies to the Muslims, but when it comes to non-Muslims, it just doesn't work that way. It's not codified that way. And what we have is another aspect of Sharia law, which is incorporated within that corpus of law, is the concept of holy war and jihad. Holy war and jihad are basically told to the Mujahideen as the highest form of service to one's God and to one's religion. So high that if you die while in executing jihad, you can be guaranteed that you're going to be put first in the list to go to paradise and have all the ample benefits of paradise at your disposal. So this type of mindset where holy war, jihad, all religion for Allah is foremost in the mind of the Mujahideen soldier, and that's the kind of mindset that we never chose to appreciate. We never chose to understand that mindset. I've always likened that mindset to kamikaze. When you look at World War II and you look at the kamikaze mindset, you're looking at people who are willing to get into aircraft fully loaded up with bombs, and the aircraft was a bomb itself, and fly into carriers, cruisers, and battleships. That kind of divine wind fighting concept is what we're dealing with, but we never took the time to understand that was what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and certainly, in our culture, we have so many nuances in terms of human rights and treatment of our fellow citizens, especially, I think, in terms of gender equality and the respect for women and girls. And, in the past, I think we even had a better, approach towards the honoring women and girls as those who deserve protection, and that men were to be protectors and so on. In the world of Afghanistan, and especially before the U.S. and Canadian intervention there, I think women, we saw horrendous things that were exposed during the time when the U.S. forces were in there, and Canadian forces, in terms of women being, stoned, beaten for various things, of course, female genital mutilation, and just the way that they were treated or unable to, they certainly were not treated as having equal rights as men. And that's no doubt the case today. I heard the other day, or this morning, I heard about a woman being shot by the Taliban for not wearing a burqa, for instance.
Yes.
And so we can probably expect, a return to the dark ages in terms of women's rights and just human rights in general.
Well, here's the problem. Our human rights code, basically the modern code comes down to us from the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, I believe. Now, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which comprises about 56 Islamic states plus Palestine as a observer state, they have never really liked that the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And what they did was they came up in 1990 with their own declaration. It was called the Cairo Declaration on Islamic Human Rights. In that declaration, the Cairo Declaration, in Articles 24, 25, I believe, they state quite flatly that all human rights in Islam will be based on Sharia. So here we have the concept of Sharia coming into any kind of human rights situation within an Islamic state. Afghanistan has just declared itself an Islamic emirate, which means that it's fully going to be in compliance with Sharia law. And here's my worry, is that Sharia law, besides the way it treats Muslim women as second-class citizens, when you look at non-Muslim women, you have a totally different situation, because non-Muslim women, under the tenets of Sharia law, can be, if they're taken in war, in battle, which the fall of Kabul certainly was, Sharia law dictates that these captured women, their marriages are immediately annulled, and they become slaves, sex or otherwise, of those who take charge of them. So we saw this with ISIS when ISIS was roaming the plains of Syria and Iraq a short time ago. We can see the same thing developing here, and I'm afraid what we have thousands of Western women who are in this particular situation. So this is not a good thing.
Yeah, certainly. Very, very concerning. Do you have any advice if the Prime Minister were to call you up and say, "What should we do now?" I mean, he and of course President Biden. That's kind of the worst case scenario I can imagine, is having Trudeau on this side of the border and Joe Biden on the other side. But if he were to ask you advice, obviously there's no simple solution. There's no solution that's going to save every life. But what would you suggest, first of all, for this current situation in Afghanistan, and secondly, going forward as we, face other crises like this, as a military person and as a person who's studied, Islam and human rights violations, what would be your advice for the Prime Minister going forward?
Well, this is not a situation to be timid. This is a situation in which the Western leaders have to bring everything to the table, and I mean everything, to get those people out of there as quickly as possible, because letting this go on for any length of time is going to be a drip. We think that, remember the Iranian hostage crisis of 1979, when they had 440 odd people, that dripped and drabbed on for a long time. This is going to be a lot worse, and it's going to be the people that are involved on the dirty end of the stick are going to be in for horrendous treatment. Everything just has to be put on the table.
You saw the beginnings of some of these crises way back, 2001, 9/11. You want to tell our audience you were in a plane, flying a plane when the Twin Towers came down. Do you want to?
I was flying the DC-9, and I was piloting the DC-9 on that particular trip. The pilot and the co-pilot. I was a co-pilot. Alternate trips, and that was my trip from Quebec City to Toronto. We got airborne early in the morning, September 11. What a beautiful day it was. And we took off, and our first contact with Toronto International happened about 100 miles out. And as soon as we introduced ourselves to Toronto International, they cleared us to land. What the heck is going on here? You never get cleared to land 100 miles out from Toronto. Most times you only get cleared to land until you're on top of the runway, because it's so busy there that they have to make sure the guy ahead of you is cleared off and on the taxiway. So we got cleared 100 miles out. So I look at my captain, I say, "Do you know what's going on here?" He said, "No." But when we landed, it was the airport was something I'd never seen before. It was chock-a-block with heavy aircraft all over the place on the taxiways. Every gate was full. There were aircraft just where you'd never see aircraft ever. So the airport was completely full, and so we taxied in. We did get a gate, and we went into the ready room, the pilot ready room, and we got there just in time to see one of the twin towers fall. So that was a striking moment. That struck me as a seminal moment in my career, my aviation career. And from that point on, the next day I started writing security plans for the Air Canada Pilot Association, and wound up working with the association over the next several years, dealing with Senate committees on aviation security, on various aspects of aviation security as a result. So that's where I really got into the threat analysis at that point, when I noted something back when I was flying fighters, F-18s in the Persian Gulf War. I picked up on some things that I found curious. And now after 9/11, I really, I started digging deep into Islam, read the Quran, dug into the Hadith, studied Islam's prophet, really tried to get a handle on what the heck was going on.
Yeah. In the last few years, you have been an important voice, in my opinion, in the Canadian discourse on these matters, security, human rights, so on. And before we close, Russ, if you could tell the people how to find you and your information, C3RF, explain a little bit about that organization and what you're up to today. And what, or not today, but in these days, these tough days, where of course we're at an election right now, that's a different kettle of fish, but and how people can get a hold of you and follow you and maybe help you in your quest to keep Canadian charter rights protected in the days ahead.
Okay, thanks very much, Rod. Back when we started back in 2017, I think we started because we were reacting against false narratives. And those false narratives have been building ever since. They've been with us and they're increasing. And now we're finding ourselves in a position where we have all these narratives about a virus, a pandemic, so dire that we have to constrain and take away our civil liberties. Actually, we've been talked into a situation where we've developed a police state, where police are actually picking up pastors and throwing them in the back of squad cars like sides of beef. I'm thinking of Pastor Pawlowski. And we're in a situation now where we're in a dire situation where the false narratives have taken over objective reality and the truth. And what we try to do at C3RF is we try to dig into the facts of what's going on, dig into the evidence, dispel these false narratives, at least challenge them, hopefully to the point where people will start thinking that, maybe they've got to look into these things themselves, especially in this election season, because what we see now, it's really scary, is we see the legacy political parties are all signed on to the false narratives. They all believe that this experimental vaccine that we have should be injected into children, even though its long-term effects are unknown at this point in time. Yeah. They've got everybody scared. Just today or yesterday, the Ontario government saying that if their MPPs aren't inoculated, then they have to leave the party. This is becoming crazy. Yeah, this is crazy time. So right now, what we're involved in is we're asking C3RF members, anybody else that will listen to us, to look at who you vote for very, very carefully, because the party system is not serving us well. It's not serving the individual citizen. The citizen is not being represented by the parties, and it's not supposed to be that way. He's supposed to be represented by his elected representative. Yeah. And these elected representatives, on many occasions, have simply been usurped by political powers, party powers, and they're doing the party will. They're not doing the will of the people.
Yep.
So what we're asking people to do is be the disruptor. Vote for a person on the basis of his principles, on what he believes, on whether or not he'll support you and your rights in the political halls of power. We're asking people to really think hard about who they put in power. Don't worry about this party winning or that party winning, because right now we're in dire straits. We just need to get some people in Parliament that are prepared to work on the basis of principles and values that serve Canadians best. Oh,
Very
you can
good.
reach us. You can reach us at www.canadiancitizens.org. And please come on over, join us, join the conversation. We've got a lot of great people who have a lot of interesting things to say.
Very good. Well, Major Russ Cooper, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been eye-opening, I'm sure, for many of us, some of the perspectives that you have on these important international events and, of course, Canada's future. We hang in the balance, and, of course, right today, we in the Christian Heritage Party are involved in the election campaign, and we're trying to offer that alternative. We're one of the groups that is trying to offer an alternative to the mainstream lockstep, narrative, as you referred to it, on so many different topics. And of course, this crisis in Afghanistan is one we're all concerned about. We do pray for the people there, Canadians and Afghanis and U.S. Citizens who need deliverance from this brutal tyranny. But thank you for joining us, and God bless you and your work.
And God bless, and I agree with everything you said, and good luck in the election. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a good day, folks. Come back next week for another edition of CHP Talks.